Open public comment for anything not on the agenda. Do we have any comments from people in the room? Seeing none, do we have any comments from folks call-ins? I'm getting the signal, no, we do not. So we can go to the agenda item number 4, approve the minutes of our last PAC meeting. That's the August standing meeting. So I'll entertain a motion or comments.
I have some comments. I believe that you should include in the minutes the sentences that you put in the email that explain where we are and how we got there, kind of thing. I think it would be good for everyone to be able to read that.
I'm not sure which sentences. They were in there in the
it's in your email message.
Well, I included a summarized version of that in the PAC report and the minutes.
Okay. I think you could expand a little bit.
Anyone else feels
I move.
same? Or want to adjust it?
I was going to make a motion.
Go ahead.
You ready?
So Lyle.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from last month.
I'll second it. This is Renee Westo-Lusk.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing no more discussion, we'll put it to a roll call vote. Dave Janis, aye. Renee Westo-Lusk,
Aye.
Wes Katzenstein, aye. Lyle Fisher,
Aye.
Judy Decker,
Aye.
Camille Anderson is not here. Tim Carroll,
Aye.
and Regina Troglin,
Aye.
and Don and John are non-voting. So with that, we'll go to the meat of the meeting, the Communication and Engagement Plan Review and Update. And the committee had met a couple times, plus some virtual meetings, and we considered all the inputs that we had gotten from folks, the 2 written inputs, as well as the comments at the meeting. We all reviewed the minutes or the recording of the last meeting, discussed them at length, and provided the draft. And so we'll entertain discussion or a motion. And I see Judy has provided some comments.
Yes. First, I'd like to thank the committee for all the hard work that they have done on this document. I know it wasn't easy for them, and I can appreciate it, having served on the prior subcommittee early on. And I appreciate your work. And I note that the reason given for doing this document at this time was because it was to satisfy part of the critique done by the Department of Water Resources. I believe there's too much, I divided my comments sort of into general comments and then some specific recommendations, which aren't really that much to change. I believe there's too much emphasis on social media throughout the document. There are certainly other areas of communication that were left out, including the fact sheet, which is something that this PAC committee approved quite a few months ago as something that needed to be available. And the other general comment, I think you need a little stronger verbiage in stating the responsibility of the public. Our country was based on a republic, and it requires that the people who live here become involved and become educated on issues. Otherwise, they're just going to be cows on a string. Under specific recommendations, I got my numbers wrong here. I forgot that you numbered the very first page, the title page, so it's off one. But I suggest adding a couple of sentences, either under purpose on page 2 or under the part about sigma and the law that you put. It could be added at the bottom of that. The two sentences are, until the comprehensive adjudication and other lawsuits are settled in Superior Court, there will be limited communication and information provided on certain issues regarding Basin 654. The other sentence is, the Groundwater Authority Board will have to prioritize communication actions recommended in the C&E plan due to limited funding. And I suggest you add those so that when the next DWR person picks it up to read it, they and others will be able to understand why some of the things that are listed are perhaps not being done. On page 4, the list of stakeholders, you have everybody there just about. I think you need to add a phrase that says that industrial and domestic, that there are also an industrial and domestic exporter of water. Because I feel that while they have a historic right to that water, they've been pumping it from this valley for almost 100 years, it needs to be acknowledged that we have someone that is pumping water and exporting it out of the valley. On page 6, under approach, I think this section needs to be verbiage that says that these items, and they're all the items we talked about, need to be prioritized by the GA board and staff due to budgetary constraints. Obviously, some of them are going to be more expensive than others, but every single one of them is going to cost money, additional money, because somebody is going to be paid a wage to do the work. On page 9, under website, you need to add that the website needs to include the website iwvga.com. This is the Stetson Engineers website, and it has all the technical information, the maps, the hydrology, the data that's been collected thus far, and a bibliography of past geologic and hydrology reports going
Judy?
back into the 60s.
Judy, isn't that iwvgsp.com?
Oh, excuse me, you're right.
That's correct. Yeah,
Right.
missed that.
Sorry, I knew that was
Very
wrong.
good. Good catch.
And you can do so by mentioning them and including the link to that site. Oh, excuse me. On page 10, fact sheets. This is an item that was discussed in the subcommittee long ago and discussed in this board. And I think you need to give some verbiage to it because I think it's quite important. If the fact sheets can be created, they can be put in paper form, but they can also be put on the website. And, you know, I'm not going to count you, John, but there are 6 people here, in this room tonight who have attended virtually every groundwater authority meeting since they first began. And that's it. I mean, here we are in this beautiful, large auditorium, and there's one member of the public. So it's important to get those fact sheets out there for the people. You know as well as I that we have had people come to the podium who do not understand how the GA board came into existence, for example. And that certainly would be a valuable fact sheet to create.
I'll make a comment here and then open it when you finish for all of our comments, but they were mentioned in a previous version, and somewhere it dropped out, and I'm looking for it furiously, and I don't see it. So
It wasn't in the last month's
It was
either.
rolled up, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It was rolled up into this higher thing because it was way too long, and the primary board
Well,
had
we-
agreed back then
But I
that we needed to
thought we
shorten
had
it.
added it back as a parenthetical reference on something that said parentheses fact sheets.
That's what the
There
brochures
is-
and handout materials are.
I'm sorry?
That's what the brochures and handout materials are
But a
referencing.
brochure
it's
is
not.
not a fact sheet.
It is not absolutely correct. It is
Well-
meant, fact sheets are mentioned in there exactly twice, the current version. And I thought, it must have been in the previous month one, and I went back and reviewed it again. It's mentioned exactly twice in the same places in the last month one, too. I missed it entirely, that it didn't even appear anymore.
Let's go ahead and come back
Okay.
to this.
Thank you.
Let's let Judy finish
Yes, Ken.
her whole thing. Sorry for interrupting, Judy.
That's okay. I understand how things got left out and forgotten, and now's the time.
It wasn't forgotten, I guarantee it.
Well, even if it was forgotten, now's the time to correct the problem if the committee feels there is one, not after we send it to the board. At least that's my thinking. Under social media, this item was discussed at the August PAC meeting to quite a length, and it was agreed that the two-way communication part of social media would be removed, and there would be only the part that was discussed, and Don Zadiba discussed this about what the water district does, whereby if someone wants to know when a board meeting is, they write back and say it's on this date at this time, or information like that, and refer people to the web page. I would like you to remove two-way communication. And the last thing I have is actually two things. On pages 11 and 12, you have communication responsibilities. The things you have listed there are not a plan. They are either part of a personnel manual or they are a directive to the board. And I do not believe that is something that a policy advisory committee should do. If the board decides to follow through on some of these issues, they are the ones who should set up the parameters and responsibilities of each issue, not this committee. And finally, I think there needs to be a closing paragraph about the GA board's need to prioritize projects. It's nice to sit at your computer's keyboard and think of all the things that should be done, could be done, but then you get down, it's like ordering something out of a catalog. Oh, you want this and you want that, and then you total up the cost, and it exceeds your budget. So I think encouraging the GA and the staff to prioritize items, not to ignore them, but to prioritize them. In this fiscal year, we're going to do this one. In this fiscal year, we're going to do that one. it's a decision for them, and it needs to be listed on the plan so that it's there and they don't forget that they need to prioritize it and to revisit it. And you have communications director. It's really nice that you put that in there, and it would probably be useful. It's going to be very expensive, and I think that should be a position that is decided by the board itself. And I'd like to point out that all of our local governments, the school district, the water district, the city of Ridgecrest, none of them have a communications director. That job seems to fall to the manager of those different districts. The superintendent of schools, Dr. Otash, he gives the press the information, not somebody else. I think you can put it in if you want, I guess. I think at this time it should be removed. I think, I don't have it on here, but I think a sentence needs to be added that this document needs to be reviewed on a regular, ongoing basis.
Judy, I just might add with respect to the water district that for the past year or so, we have engaged with a public relations firm to assist us in communication.
But you don't have a staff person.
No, we don't have a staff person, and perhaps this is something that the Groundwater Authority might consider. I don't know that this would be a full-time job. I would envision something on an as-needed basis, so in regards to that, perhaps something like a professional public relations firm would be an option, where you use them as needed. I can tell you we've been very happy with the firm that we've been using and the quality of their work.
Well, I don't know what they've done for you because what I read comes from you.
That's the appearance that when those forms do that, they are speaking as the water district or as the city, because the city has been extremely active on social media in the last few months with video campaigns, a lot of informational posts, two-way communication with some residents, and I think based on some of the text, it looks like they either are using a firm or they have somebody within staff who's now taken up that position as well.
Right, they have
So
someone within
professional.
staff. That is certainly a possibility.
Seems
And
like at
it's
one
not
point
listed here as such.
It was written specifically to allow that. The PAC as a whole made a recommendation 2 months ago that there was a need for a role to be filled, a position, and outlined somebody accountable and responsible for that role. It doesn't say they have to hire them. It doesn't say they have to use new monies. That is part of any policy that an entity has at its discretion during the year to prioritize anything in the budget and do it to some degree or less. That is normal operation. But this was one of our big four recommendations, just as the fact sheets were a part of one of the other big four and should not be removed. I believe that should be added. But I would think, in the interest of time, what we should do is go back to the top and address each recommendation. So let's start with the specific recommendations.
How about the general ones? Those two sentences.
Okay,
I would counter those first two sentences being in there. We discussed this at length, I believe, at the last meeting and other meetings. The purpose of the document is to be a living document. And those lawsuits, while important at this point, shouldn't be in there. And I think I've made that point in the past. We don't know how they're going to shake out. The adjudication could turn everything on its head, or it could leave everything the way that it is. We don't know yet. And once the adjudication does finalize, this document would have to be updated regardless, because DWR's standards, I'm sure, would change post-adjudication. So until that point, it shouldn't be updated. And as far as, the second part, we've discussed this in the past. I think Renee's made a couple of points with it. We have a scope that we're, supposed to try and stay in. Our scope was to propose, communication methods, ways to communicate with the general public that benefited all users, not just one sector of user. And us telling the board to prioritize this or to prioritize that, whether it's based on monetary or based on what a community wants, the board is going to have to decide that. And it's my opinion that it isn't our job to tell them what to prioritize and what not to prioritize. That'll come down to the lawyers and the board.
I don't say anything about telling the board what to prioritize. I'm saying that the board needs to prioritize. I would not presume to tell the board what to prioritize. And the fact of the matter is, if you think back, going back to the lawsuits, and you think about when Eddie Imsand was here, the last year he was here, all he ever said was that he was present. He quit making comments. The reason he quit making comments was, in fact, because of these lawsuits. The board, there are things that the board cannot discuss with the public because of those lawsuits. And they may be things that the public would really like to know. And putting a sentence in the P&E document regarding that is simply acknowledging that they exist and that it limits communication in certain areas. That's all it does.
Other thoughts on that issue? Members?
I have some more when you're ready, but that's not specifically that.
We'll get to the other comments.
Okay.
Just on this one in general, or specifically.
I would suggest if we include these comments, the words "will" should be replaced with "may."
Absolutely.
Okay.
There may be limited communication, and the GA board may have to prioritize communication actions.
That's fine.
I would agree with that.
So is there a general feeling that with the modification of that sentence, the word "will" to "may" be limited, that we would concur?
That I'd be more comfortable with.
Is there anyone who disagrees? And in which section, so that we can get this modified and out at the end of this meeting or shortly thereafter?
I really think, well, I wrote this, giving you a choice. I really think it fits better under page 2 that's titled Sigma Considerations, and put it at the end of that little section.
Sigma communication requirements.
No, it says Sigma, it's on page 2. It's on page 3, excuse me. You numbered the title page. It says,
Requirements.
requirements.
So it's not a requirement. I would say.
Yeah, but it says, I can't read that first word, communication.
But it would go best as a part of the background.
Well, put it there then.
Yeah. And that may be, does that seem to be the most appropriate place to everyone? Because it actually is a part of the background. And with the word "may," there's so many uncertainties, and even if those lawsuits stay alive and have the impact, until some level of solution, they may not limit communications, or they won't on a will basis. It's a may. You know, some things they're going to be able to talk entirely about, and others they may be limited in what they say. So I think
Right.
may is with the changing the word may.
That's fine.
Do we all agree to add this to the background section?
Yes, I do. I do.
Any opposed? We're not voting on this. We'll vote at the end in summary of
Can you-
adding these changes we make.
Can you repeat the page number?
It would be page 2.
Well-
Then, or actually background, does it,
Section 2A at the end of it.
yeah, it flops over to the next page, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so it
it'll
would
be
The
be,
page-
last thing in section 2A.
It'll end up on page 3.
yeah,
It'll be at the end of the background section.
yeah.
We're changing shall to may.
No,
No, we're
will.
changing will to may.
I'm trying to find where.
It's Judy's comment. It's under specific recommendations, the italicized.
that second.
Yeah,
Oh,
1 and
GA
2.
board may have to prioritize communications? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, so it'll
All right.
read may instead of will.
Yeah, there's really two instances there where I recommended changing will to may, and that's both of the italicized sentences that Judy provided.
Yeah.
Yes. So there are both wills to may.
Okay, okay, I agree to that.
Okay. So we all agree we can go to page 4 comments. List of stakeholders should, and I don't have any objection to that at all.
The way it reads right now, one could,
It doesn't exclude, that list excludes nothing. It just,
right, but it implies that all of the users are here in the valley, and they aren't in this case. It's nothing negative against Sills Valley Minerals or the Toronto Domestic Water Company. It's just to note that they do export the water.
So
If you
what,
wanted to add a lot, you could say they've been doing it since 1930, but I don't think that's necessary because it's not naming them, it's just saying there is a industrial and a domestic user who export water from this valley.
so what I would suggest, I'm not opposed to what Judy's saying, is in that list on page 4, it's, I think, that first paragraph, where it actually has business, large, small ag, domestic well,
Yeah,
profit. I was
right in
going to say,
there.
my mic is very loud. So I would add industrial there because it is not in that list, which Judy is correct. And then under the background would be the most appropriate location to make a note of the IWV basin is very unique, that it does have a exporter into another location. So it should probably be separated into two different things, but not getting into Cyril's history or anything like
No
that, because that's
names.
pretty lengthy in the GSP.
Yeah, no names. That's why I put it under number 4, where you have listed all the different types of users. You could just put it there and put industrial and domestic water exporter. That's just, 4 words.
Well, in fact, I think we also have a beer company exporting water indirectly.
They would be under industry.
So I think maybe your general statement you just made might be the appropriate one.
Okay.
Are we sure that we want to be that detailed?
I think
Because
Judy,
this is the communication and engagement plan.
It's just acknowledging that someone, and they are an industrial and a domestic user, are exporting water.
Yes, but you're,
It
sorry.
doesn't say who it is.
No, that's not my point. My point is, for this particular part, you're just basically describing a brief overview of people listed in Appendix A. I don't know that we need to go into that great detail of who those people are because there will be an Appendix A with various groups listed.
She's talking about just updating, it's adding that one piece, the exporters, to that small list
It's
on
the
page
li-
4.
It's the,
I understand. And you're talking about basically looks like the third paragraph after the 2 bullet points.
Yeah.
Comprehensive listing of interested parties was developed. This list includes, and then you go on to list a whole variety. My question is, do you even need to list all that variety of people? Because it is supposed to be a comprehensive list.
Oh, you're talking about removing that whole long
I'm
sentence.
talking philosophically about the communication and engagement plan. Do you want to list all the groups that you're planning on involving in your Appendix A and your now new Appendix B?
So you're suggesting removing the entire sentence that says, this listing includes da-da-da-da-da. You're talking about getting rid of that entire sentence?
or
I think I understand your question,
Yes.
Camille. I would say that, yes, it is important to tap on these throughout, in these small little segments. So throughout the document, they are mentioned in one way or another to address them, because there's a couple of communities or, items that are more important to some rather than all. So Appendix A, is mentioned in this paragraph.
Well, I have
And-
nothing against putting in industrial users if you wanted to mention the specifics of the fact that in our basin, we do have a whole community that is reliant upon exported water. That should go in the background, but it's already in the GSP.
Yeah, so I think that's what Judy
So
was saying.
I just think that you don't necessarily need to have it every single place. It just makes for a longer document.
No,
I
what I'm
would-
saying is putting it just in this one, not in the background, not touching
let me
on
make
that.
a recommendation that splits the baby, perhaps, and captures the intent without being overly lengthy, is that we add in that sentence that includes all the listing, we add one category bounded on each side by a comma, industrial and domestic exporters of water.
Yes. I mean,
That's it.
what I'm saying.
That's it, Camille.
my rationale for putting it in there actually is this list includes DACs and SDACs and EDAs, and if you want to get real technical about such things, I don't think that should be in there because we have domestic well owners that fit under the SDAC category as well as customers of the water district who fit under that category and so on and so forth. And that's a leftover thing from the GSP, actually, I think.
So
But,
let's see if
but I
Camille,
like what you said,
let's see if
David.
Camille's okay with those words. Nothing more than that. We aren't going to call out the names of the companies.
The DACs and the SDACs?
No,
or
No,
no. Don't worry
Ignore
about
that.
that comment. Just adding industrial, this is quote, industrial and domestic exporters of water.
Is it at the end, the very end of the sentence?
You could put it at the beginning or the end. You could put it after domestic well owners, for example.
I still don't necessarily see the significance of putting in that it's industrial and domestic exporters of water.
Because they're unique in that they do not,
But
They
this
are
is a
not here.
list, this is a list of interested parties. This is not the specifics of how various groups use the particular amount of water that they're pumping. That's all in the GSP. I don't think that we need to separate out every special, unique part of our basin.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Camille. Is it an oversight that industrial users were not cited in this at all, even the first time? not mentioning whether they're exporters of water, but just industrial users. It looks like that was an oversight to me.
It depends on how you're defining industrial users as opposed to businesses. I mean, the hospital uses water. Granted, they don't pump it. They buy it from the water district, but they're
But
bigger
there are-
than we are.
And our construction folks which use water, are they industrial or businesses?
Well, and again, that's one reason why you want broad categories and you don't need to specify each and everything. If you want to put in industrial and domestic, I'm okay with that. I don't necessarily think that you want to put in exporter of water, because then again, you might have to talk about the brewing company and
Yes, you might, and they export water.
this is not the place to discuss that. This
But
is the community engagement plan, and you are discussing the list of interested parties in Appendix A. Interested
certainly are.
parties can belong to any group. They're just interested.
Then let's change the sentence to interested stakeholders, or to stakeholders and interested parties, and cut out all those lines.
I'm fine with that.
It seems to me that you could, and I've heard both arguments, but it seems to me you could simplify this by just eliminating that sentence, because it would read, during the formation of the IWVGA, a comprehensive listing of interested parties, Appendix A, was developed. And the
Period.
next sentence would be, this listing of over 150 stakeholders includes it explains that. I don't know.
That's fine.
We're trying to
Let's do that.
wordsmith. Okay.
Okay.
We are, but a concern is, and this was pointed out early on too, so within the document itself, this is the only location that DACs, SDACs, and EDAs is actually mentioned.
Aren't they listed in the Appendix A?
But this is a
They will be, but they are
This is a
supposed.
communication plan,
But they
again.
were requested by DWR.
Correct. We have to address them within this
In the plan.
document. That was a DWR thing. And it's important to address them in some way or manner somewhere in the document. So if
But
we take them out
Appendix A
here,
Appendix A is part of the document, is it not?
yes, it is.
And they're mentioned in
Doesn't
Appendix A.
that group fit better in concerns and challenges? Because isn't that the concern and challenge in reaching those particular groups because they're more difficult and they have special challenges themselves?
You're suggest-
Otherwise, you're just throwing it in there just to put the words in so DWR is happy.
Well, and these are previous words. These are words from the old communications plan.
I think Camille's making a good point, though. I do agree with her on that it would probably be more appropriate to move them.
So if we
mention
added in that list of, or in the challenges, communications with unique organization, what's the right word I'm thinking of? That's not it. Including DACs, SDACs, and EDAs. If that bullet was added into the challenges, and this sentence could be removed from the decision-making process.
Yes.
But I just have one question for this whole paragraph. It doesn't really say how it's part of the decision-making process.
That's how, it is a lead-in. The decision-making process is summarized in the last paragraph, but it talks about how we identified and maintain an updated and current list of all the folks that are involved through communications and engagement in the decision-making process. So a large part of this decision-making process focuses on how you're trying to communicate, get the information to folks, and ensure they have the opportunity to engage. And then the concluding sentence is, all input is taken into account in the decision-making process. And that's what we understood from DWR's intent, their reference to the water code section that talks about all the other parties that may be harder to reach for various social, economic, disadvantaged communication.
I like the idea of adding it to concerns and taking this whole big sentence out.
That works for me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That's good for me, too.
Okay.
Anyone disagree?
I just want to recap, so you're removing the sentence starting with the listing includes local community residents, and it ends with and community organizations, and you're going to move it to another page?
No, we're going to take that part out, and on the next page, on page 6, I guess it is, or 5, there's a title that says, Challenges and Concerns, and it will be number 13, DACs, SDACs, EDAs.
And we capture everything else that's listed in that sentence, either under the original Appendix A, which we're just not being specific about what groups were under it, or the listing we added for the new proposed Appendix B, because it's all there. So we're removing a sentence that was just more detail and moving the thing that we might lose that DWR was focusing on to a concern, because it is a concern. So everyone okay with that?
Yeah, specific, yes, what are we going to say specifically under bullet 13? Are we just going to list those and not put
No,
a
just-
verb or
Well,
That may need some wordsmithing once I get it added in there.
yeah, well,
To figure out the right
specifically, we want to pick up the communications difficulties with communities, DACs, SDACs, and EDAs.
That's all you need to say.
Yes.
Communication difficulties with DACs, SDACs, and EDAs.
Okay, so we've resolved that one.
I do have a suggestion on that, though.
Yes, Camille?
Turned off it by itself. If we could spell out what the abbreviations are, because that's a pet peeve of mine, is to have an acronym with no actual
Yeah, if they were-
explanation.
I'll make a note to make sure I don't forget that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we had erred on the other side of that. We discovered when we were editing this that we had spelled out many of the acronyms 50 times instead that had already been defined in the document. So we'll make sure, agree with your peeve. Okay, so now we're up to page 6 approach. To my mind, that is a basic fundamental of any document of an agency. That doesn't need to be stated.
Okay.
in a way, we've already kind of stated it. We changed the wills to mays, although maybe they were addressing slightly different topics.
We're on a different topic.
Understand, right?
We're about prioritizing items listed in the approach.
Well, a real concern I and
Top of page
others
6.
have, which I state here at the end, is in fact the using of the replenishment fee money for something other than replenishment.
But we can't tell the board what they can and cannot use that money for. They're going to make
Well,
that
you tell them lots of
determination.
other things, but we can suggest that they prioritize, is all I'm suggesting.
That's like telling an agency they have to act like an agency.
Well, that might not be a bad idea in some cases, huh?
I'm really asking, or thinking out loud here, it seems like these 4 items that we list here under approach are all things we think should happen.
Those were the 4 items really that we recommended as the pillars, our 4 pillars of our PAC report on recommendations for the GA communication and engagement, not necessarily the plan, how to do it. And that's where we dropped from number 1 the word fact sheets, by the way, but we'll get to that. These four items under approach were the big four in our PAC report 2 months ago. we all
Maybe the
agreed on.
word under number 3, maybe the word employ should read use. Then if the board would decide to give additional duties to one of the staff people, that would fit. Employ implies hiring a new person.
Yeah, employee was used because we thought it had to be an employee of the GA, not another agency. It needed to be somebody who was accountable to the agency.
But isn't that again telling the board what to do?
It's the board, we're providing a recommendation for what the board is going to commit to. They can choose to accept it or not accept it. They are speaking to the public with this plan.
I would like it a lot better if you put use instead of employ.
Maybe like create a communications director function within the GA
That's fine, that's a lot more words.
that
I think if they were to use, again, who are they going to use? Does the county have a communications director? I don't know. The city doesn't, and I mean, if they have someone under contract, like the water district has someone under contract, then the water district or the city have to give them directions to do this. And it would have to come before a public meeting. It goes back, it's a circle, and it goes back to the fact that we live in a time when the public is not interested in assisting various governing entities in what they're doing until after it's done.
This committee recommended this specifically in the PAC report. And the reason was because our take on what had happened over the last 3 years, 4 years, the development of the Groundwater Authority, was communication wasn't focused. There's certain things that didn't happen, that folks didn't have somebody didn't have the responsibility and accountability to coordinate that. And the difference between this agency and many of those agencies that you mentioned, it is a JPA of 5 other entities.
Right.
And by the way, it's composed of two main bodies within it are groundwater or a water resource manager and a general manager. And so specifically, the needs to coordinate all those functions and make sure that the items that are going out from the Groundwater Authority they're focused on note and capture all the important pieces and flows. That's part of why we said there needs to be a communications director. And maybe we just said director position.
Okay.
Well, what,
I mean, I would think in the scheme of things, if the GA board accepts this and decides to go forward with a communications director, the first person they're going to turn to is their general manager. And we know that the general manager, in fact, is not a local person. She's hired from a governing management firm. And she might say, oh, well, we have someone could do that here at, what is it, RGA? And again, using that someone will cost additional dollars.
so the phrasing, Dave, I think to potentially satisfy Judy's point and keep the sentiment that was originally discussed is instead of it reading the way that it does, it would be employ and or appoint. So that gives them more of an option, that's some wiggle room in there.
And or utilize?
I think appoint might be the proper phrasing
I
for
like
that.
utilize,
I do too.
Okay.
only because appoint does mean that you are then deciding on, that you're going to look at a group of people and you're going to appoint one person whether or not you pay them. If the concern is that they're going to be paid and the GA may not have money and we've told them they must employ somebody, employee has multiple meanings.
Yes, it does.
And on the back, you do have the duties that you have
That's why
put
it's
down
in there.
for the
That's
communications
why
director.
that is specifically in there.
And
How about
so-
just a simple word of designate? And
I
you can
was-
actually take it further, designate.
Well, and
Because
with-
it doesn't officially appoint, but it's designate an individual or entity of the GA staff to be responsible for the implementation of the communication and engagement plan.
Love it.
I believe
It can be any
yes.
existing entity. It doesn't matter if it's a general manager, one of the board members, but you've got to at least stipulate it.
I like
Because
the
if you
word
leave it too
designate.
vague, it's going to be ignored.
That's
Is that
correct.
something everybody can agree to? Because we.
Yes.
Yes.
So appoint a communications director.
No, he said
No, designate.
I'm sorry.
Designate.
Designate.
We'll get
Can't
together.
control what came out of my mouth, sorry. My mind heard designate. Okay, and a typo, we can
I see that.
eliminate the all caps
I saw that.
parenthetical expression.
That was one that we must have missed, so when I did the find and replace, it just swapped it out and we were already down too far.
Well, while we're here, let's, I think we can handle the fact sheet piece because it was in one of my original drafts. It dropped out somewhere up in item number 1.
Okay.
It was notice and inform the public about the status of groundwater, provide accurate, objective, and timely information through the use of multiple communication venues, fact sheets, and tools. We wanted,
Right, that fact sheets
Where
are
are we
a tool.
going to put that?
I know, but I think this committee that was one of our singular recommendations, and I agree with Judy's points that it has somehow dropped out. In my mind, it was still in here.
So that's what brochures and handouts are. Handouts are the fact sheets, they're just not
No.
called
No,
fact
they're
sheets.
not. No, they're not.
How about fact sheets in that sentence?
Yeah,
At the-
so that section would then change.
David, where are you putting this?
I'm not putting it anywhere yet.
So
Oh.
so what I would suggest is taking, what section is this in? Section C, item 7, will change to fact sheets.
Section C of which bigger section? Page.
Page 10. Let's go with pages, 'cause some of these sections are a little
Why don't we
lengthy.
go- well, Okay.
So it will be fact
So
sheets and
about
handouts,
page
not
9.
brochures.
So under brochures,
So I would suggest brochures, fact sheets, and other handout materials. Because
Yes.
we came up with a really good fact sheet, and in my mind, a fact sheet is more than a brochure. A fact sheet could actually, a collection of fact sheets might end up being a short summary document, for example, of the GSP or other things. So I think we gave
suggest-
fact sheet its own meaning, and I would propose brochures, fact sheets, and other.
I would propose number 7 being fact sheets,
well, it's,
and number 8 being brochures and other materials. I have a problem with brochures.
They can contain anything.
It sounds like an ad for going to the fair or something.
how about fact sheets and handout materials? Eliminate the word brochures. And also in that first sentence, because those 4 things that we have in bullets were the prioritized fact sheets.
Correct.
So,
Then we need to.
It was a change in verbiage that we didn't catch.
yes.
So it-
would
brochures
read
should have been fact sheets.
and handout and other,
Yes.
fact sheets and other handout materials.
I think, however, if you want to put in what you read, that's fine. If you want to put in what I wrote, that's fine. I think there needs to be verbiage about the fact sheets. People know what handout materials might be, but a fact sheet is different than a brochure, as Lyle said. And I think there needs to be verbiage in there to guide not only the board, but the staff as to what we meant by fact sheet.
Yeah, we do have that in both the PAC report and the detailed PAC report where we went into great detail on that.
But this is the communication plan, and it needs to be in the communication plan because that's what's going to be referred to. And I think you'll find perhaps that DWR really likes it. I would guess that there are not fact sheets associated with other groundwater agencies that fall under SGMA.
One of them did.
Yeah.
It was
There's at least 3.
Yeah, they were
I
there.
only saw one, and it mentioned a fact sheet, but it was at the end of something else, so.
Maybe the one sentence we talked about him being concise, and there was a one-sentence summary that we had in fact sheets about concise and, what's the word, layman's terms?
Factual.
Yes.
Yeah, I think when we did the roll-up, that's how this worked out, reading it. This was part of that roll-up. That's why it's so short, is that original thing was pretty dense.
Well, and
then we rolled
had-
it up, and maybe
had
we rolled it
some
up
of-
too high.
We had some of the same arguments going the other way, that we needed to condense a lot of this plan, that it didn't need to be detailed, so
Yeah.
we're going to end up with a happy medium.
Yeah. So if, maybe you still have a copy of that, and we can relook at it and add it to the
I think there is
top
a
piece.
one sentence, it's kind of a long sentence, but it defines that, and we would add that in this section and eliminate brochure from the title and the first sentence,
Correct.
and replace it with fact sheets.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone, any other thoughts? Everybody agree?
Sort of. I think perhaps when you have a sentence that talks about fact sheet, you can mention that they will also be available on the website. I think that's important.
I thought I saw that.
Well, we say several places the website would be the central repository for everything.
Okay, you skipped my page 9 about the website.
I know we're going to get back to that. We went on to it because we were on those
the
4
fact
major
sheets.
points under approach.
Yeah. So that would be the only thing then, so that swap out, and then Dave, if you can find that sentence so that we can maybe look at it and get it added and kind of wordsmith that first portion a little bit more.
I will pull that out.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about adding the word fact sheets to under approach sub-bullet number 1. And then we skipped down to what we just talked about, and I'm wondering, do we want to add the word fact sheets under C1 after venues, or maybe that, to me, sounds like it might be a little bit too specific
That
right
was
there.
my point. That's why we ended up over there to Dave, was fact sheets are tools.
And
So that would be too
If we want to
detailed.
emphasize fact sheets and maintain that sentence, we could entertain also adding fact sheets and other tools to maximize distribution.
I think that's still too specific. You're adding a very specific
Where are
tool.
you talking about doing that?
The new page 6, right at the top, under C,
No.
approach.
Item number 1 under approach. Through the use of multiple communications venues and fact sheets and tools to maximize distribution. That doesn't make sense.
The reason I bring it up is earlier on in this discussion,
Well, we-
we were focusing on that, and then we
Then we thought it would be better back
Right.
in that section that we just modified.
Right, and so,
And I think maybe with that modification, we've addressed the issue.
right, just didn't want to have a loose end. I agree with what you just said, just didn't want to leave a loose end floating out here.
Right, it's, C is general.
Okay, so So we all agree we'll go with the previous modification under page 10, page 10, section 7, fact sheets and other handout materials, and adding the sentence to describe fact sheets. So we're going to add that sentence. And that addresses that comment. So now we're up, Judy's comment about page 9. Our assumption was, at least the assumption in my mind was the website is going to contain the pointers and information to everything else, and it would be where referenced, if they are not separated or merged, it would be where the Stetson website was pointed to, because that's an implementation factor that they may choose to do it differently in the future.
But yes, they may. But most people don't know about the Stetson website, and it should actually be put on the GA website right now as a link.
And
all it has to do is be put on there as a link. And incidentally, the Stetson website doesn't have a link to the GA website.
That's the point of this section, and we actually put it in there somewhere of that .org website, which is the primary website for the GA, that is the one that's owned by the GA, is the singular repository. So if Stetson's running their own, all of that information either needs to be linked into the main, or that website has to be dismantled and then added to the current one that the GA runs. That's the point of this segment.
It's years worth of work and reports, and it needs to be acknowledged as a link.
The purpose of this section is to determine the singular. Adding in any information of, if we add that website, then that gives the open door that you could drive a truck through of, well, then I can just keep this separate one and never talk about it again.
Well, I disagree with you 100%.
Could I make
I think one takes advantage of the opportunity that exists, and the website is there. It's been announced multiple times at the GA meeting that 6 people attend.
Can I make a suggestion? Why can't we just add that iwvgsp.com to where it says the website should include, and shall include
That's what I'm
a
asking
link,
for.
a link to that.
That's what I'm asking for.
And I think that's too specific. There may be other links that we want to provide. What we should say here is all other websites or links, and we could put in parentheses, i.e. or e.g., the Stetson website, and define it, will be linked to and therefore become a part of a subset, just like anything else we link to, of the website, the GA website. It is the parent website, or it is the master website. And so the GA would have that listing for any of the other references. They may have a link on that website, and they do, I believe, to Sigma and to the state water code.
So here's the issue with that, unless there is a way to do it that I'm not aware of. By having the 2 separate websites, one of the things that we've discussed a lot is searchability for documentation or whatever. If you have 2 separate websites, because these are completely different repositories, they do not link, they do not touch right now. If there's a way to link them, that's one thing. If their databases can be fully linked. I'm not aware of that being a possibility without physically moving all of that data over or combining them in some way, which is going to take a webmaster to do. In their world, that might be possible. So by having these 2 separated, we come right back to the issue of the website still not being searchable. So if you're looking for hydrology reports and you go to the .org site and you type it in the search bar, I want hydrology data for, whatever report year. Is that going to come up if those websites are still separated and those repositories are separated? Which may be a question for whatever webmaster there is.
We may be getting wrapped up too much in the detail.
I believe so. I
But-
think all you need to do is, after all, the GA is paying Stetson. They are their contractor.
Well,
Let me
the
Their,
throw a com-
their website needs to be listed also as a website.
Let me throw a comment in here. The last sentence in that section says, social media infographics, brochures, and fact sheets will directly link back to the website, da-da-da-da-da. There might be an opportunity for another sentence that says, the website shall provide links to other important websites, and in parens, such as Stetson's website, period. So that, and then ultimately, though, we need to meet your needs, Regina, that the search, when you do a search, the search needs to find all information in both websites. So maybe that is set as a should-be type goal in here, that searches for material on the GA website should also find relevant material in other websites, such as the Stetson website. Maybe something along that line.
That's really, you want to put something in that's going to require funding. That would be it.
Well, I use the word should, but
I think you guys are missing Regina's point and what you've said here also, which is there should be one website for the Groundwater Authority. The fact that Stetson has a separate website that they're putting data on is not necessarily a good thing. For one, what if Stetson is not staff in 5 years? What's going to happen to all the data that's on that website? Is that going to be taken over? Is that going to be given to the Groundwater Authority? Is it just going to be a website that goes nowhere? There's all sorts of implications for having a separate website that stores the data that you're basing your projects, et cetera, on.
That's
It should be
certainly
a
something-
subset of the main website.
That's fine, but it needs to be acknowledged. I would even guess that 4 of the 5 board members don't even know there's a Stetson website.
And that's the problem.
It's problematic.
No, I
So
think-
in your plan, you don't need to address necessarily the fact that Stetson has a website that's parallel to your website that's going to confuse people. That needs to be a separate item for the board to discuss amongst themselves on how do they want to deal with public access for that data.
And one way for us to handle it, and I think address Regina's question, which you're correctly, I believe, interpreting, is to say that all data should be posted on the website, as such, and then the board can do the mechanics of this. Stetson should be posting it, anything that they're posting to their website, they should preferably be posting it to the GA website.
That's Camille is correct, and you're hitting it as well, Dave. Is we talked about searchability, we've talked about all these things, but we have it already specifically listed a few times actually before this point that this website, the .org, is the singular repository. So adding in Stetson's we're not allowing for that. If the GA is going to have to figure that out regardless at some point, if they're going to figure it out this year or 5 years from now when Stetson's not around, if they're, not around like, the hypothetical. So, it's going to have to be resolved at some point. And because there's a separate repository right now that is causing an issue with not being able to find things, not even knowing that it exists, that's what this entire segment was designed to do, was to take that off the table. So we're not doing that anymore.
We're not
We'll
having
have a
public
singular.
comment yet, but I will break with the rules. Don, go ahead.
Thank you. My microphone's on.
Yep.
The Stetson website is a technical website. And whether or not you call the .org website, the GSP website, a singular website, I think that's a question mark. What's on the Stetson website is there's no comparison in terms of the complexity and the amount of material that's there. Hundreds of wells and details of those wells and other annual recordings are on that website. The idea of combining both of them, actually the Stetson website was the first one, and in time. And the idea of combining them, I'm not sure it even makes any sense. They are doing two entirely different things. One is programmatic detail. Actually, it really is just a repeat of month by month the agendas, and then ultimately the the reporting of the meeting is recorded month by month by month. That's what's really there. There is not that much. The website that actually has the detail is the Stetson website. So, which one should really take precedence? I don't think either one of them. I think they should just stay the way they are. For one thing, the cost of transferring data is that's ridiculous at this point. It gets more and more complicated as time goes on. That's why websites persist. And as far as Camille, as far as what's going to preserve the essence of this GSA, there's nothing to say that the .org website has much more stability than does Stetson. We've got those lawsuits looming.
That's true. However, Stetson is a private company and they own that domain name, whereas the Groundwater Authority is more public.
Actually,
and that's a .org.
Well, there was a discussion in the very beginning as to who was going to actually have their name on that website, and I'm not sure that it is Stetson. It was done for the authority.
Mm-hmm.
It was
I
not
think
something that Stetson did for themselves.
I think we're
Regardless, at least there should definitely be a link back and forth on both of them.
Absolutely.
Which
That's what I
isn't there.
said.
as a minimum. I think we're getting in the weeds. I think the way to solve this in a way we can get to a solution, if any.
If I may, one, it's not uncommon for websites to have links to other websites
Right.
outside of their own database or server. Simple, if you look at the GA website, it's got an IWVGA documents, referenced materials. You can just put in technical supporting data as a link, you're done. It's
Well, that
quick and easy.
doesn't meet Camille's or Regina's
It doesn't,
concern.
but it's at least
But that
to
is what
deal
I
with
was
the
going to
initial
propose as
issue.
the only way that we can solve this and not is to say we should change, it should be the singular reference and searchable to the maximum extent possible and should include a listing of all other websites that may contain valid data for this basin. And that would encompass, as best we can define at this level, what we should be doing. It's the intent that we recommend that the GA take with this, and there are valid needs for a separate technical website to a degree, and there may be major problems with duplicating that information on another website, as we've talked about, cost and other things.
That's really all I was asking for,
And
is
so-
acknowledging that there was another website.
Well, you wouldn't call it out in this document. What you would say is what I just said.
So what I would, based on what you've said, Dave, so let's see, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. So number 4, bullet point in section 4 of the website, based on what you said, and it is what it is. I would then add, so it would say document and web links or appropriate web links or whatever, and leave it at that. And we move on from there.
Yeah, but I think that's too general. We need something that says specifically this basin in it. Because when you're referring to the, what is it, Sigma website and DWR, that has nothing to do with our basin specifically. And I think it's important to have that in there about links that are specific to our basin.
I agree.
I think that's appropriate.
Well, maybe we might want to add a last sentence to this whole, we might want to modify a bullet and add a last sentence, say that specifically links will be provided to the Stetson website, which is a
But
important source.
that's what we just discussed, is not specifying other websites.
You
is
don't call
leaving
it
it
the
generic.
Stetson website.
Well, you don't even
You
call out.
it's by its name.
You don't even call that out, because there are other websites that that are relevant. You should say,
Documents and web links, and leave it there. Leave
no,
it, leave it general.
I believe the basin reference is needed.
And so document and web links associated with the basin?
With data, any data relevant to the basin.
Yeah, specific to this
Specific.
basin.
Well,
Well,
I wouldn't say
that's the
specific
last
to, I'd
bullet,
say
Dave.
relevant to, because there may be general information around us that we need to know also.
Speaking of the weeds, I think you guys are in it. The way to do it is to just, in one of your sentences in the section where you're at, put the Stetson website down.
And we
Be
don't
explicit.
want to be that specific, because there
Why
are many.
not?
Why not?
Because we could list many. And
No.
so what about the ones we leave out?
No, there's
Because
nothing
Sigma
that,
also
there's nothing
applies.
like the Stetson
It
website.
doesn't talk about our basin specifically, hardly at all.
We
just-
capture that thought and yet capture there are many other web links besides what's colloquially called the Stetson website that are
Not
relevant.
specific
No, there's
to
not.
our basin. Not specific to Sigma
Specific
and the
to-
overdraft.
Specific to things that we need regarding our basin. There are things around us, including DWR's website.
Actually, I think that if you leave in the document links with easily searchable features and then say links to the technical information on the website and then list the website.
Okay.
Well, that's why I was
That-
leaving it so broad where it's just web links.
I think that because that information on the what we're calling the Stetson website, the .com site, is information that the Groundwater Authority has paid for in many cases. I mean, that's technical information that they're using to develop the GSP and the model, et cetera, et cetera. So you do actually, I think, need to be specific in this case and say that you need to have a link in the main website to the technical website, which is the .com website.
So would you add that?
Thank you.
Would you add that, as I said a while ago, with an IE or an EG?
No,
You-
because
you
it's
would-
specifically the website repository of data that's used. It's not a for example. It is the data repository.
It is not the only one.
It is the main one that the Groundwater Authority uses for making their determinations.
It is much more specific to this basin. There are, as you pointed out, there are lots of other links But I think that is very specific, lots of data, and maybe it should be called out.
Well, if you do it as an IE or an EG, you capture that and you catch any other that may exist already or may be coming up in the future. A DRI website, what's the Stantec. That's a different study. The helicopter guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there were other data sets that came in and were posted in some cases both places. But my concern was we're not being broad enough. If everybody else is happy with it, I'm fine.
Maybe we could do both.
I'm happy
Well, that's
with
what the
what
IE
Camille
does.
said. She captured it. It should be a bullet point or added to the links bullet point that includes the repository for technical data and then lists the website.
Do we
That's
have
what
the
you said,
exact
right?
wording?
So
Yes.
read what you would say.
So what I would do then, if that's the consensus of the group, is taking the last bullet point, because from what I'm hearing, that's basically what that last bullet point is. That's the data that's on Stetson's, is transition it to basically read basin information, comma, background, comma, additional data linked to
Available on the
or
web.
available from other sources, parentheses, i.e., comma, that website spelled out.
No.
And then,
No, it should be, you could add it it says document links with easily reachable features. You could add including the repository for, but I think it should be a special bullet. It says repository for IWV technical data, and then list the website, the Stetson website. You don't have to put Stetson's name.
No.
He's doing it for this organization. He's doing it for us. That is the purpose of it. So that if the Technical Advisory Committee gets a report from DRI or Jean Moran on well data, it will be there. You can look it up. You can see for yourself instead of trying to read it on the screen. You can see, oh yes, the wells in the Northwest have dropped 2 feet in the last 6 months. That's nonsense. But as an example, there are people that we want to get involved in this process that we're paying for. At least some of us are paying for it. We want to get them involved and get educated. And if you don't give them a website to read, they aren't going to get educated.
but that's what I just said.
No, she
Was-
doesn't. Take out the IE.
And just leave it blank?
No, take out I period, E period.
Okay.
Leave the website.
Okay, so the last bullet point then would read, basin information, comma, background, comma, additional data repository web links, parentheses, IWVGA, I think, GSP.com, and that's it.
Is everybody happy
Would that,
I'd
Satisfy
buy
the
that.
group?
That's good.
I
I just
don't
want
see
that
why-
website in there.
okay, yeah, that's what I mean. So it's in the last bullet point, because that last bullet point was already talking about basin information and data.
Yeah,
So-
and that's specifically what that describes.
That's what I'm hearing. So that would be,
Why
my
the-
suggestion
Why the
for the change.
parentheses?
The website.
because websites are always listed in parentheses when mentioned in documents.
According to what? Usually it's just a comma website. I don't know where the prints come from.
Anytime I've
You
seen,
talk about the weeds.
Yeah.
It's, we've whatever the structure we've kind of adopted is to put it in.
It's fine,
We've mentioned
Regina.
other websites.
All
The
right.
structure we've adopted is to put it in parents.
Yeah.
It's consistent with every other, in fact, the GA itself listed up above. So that's fine.
Okay, so to reiterate, to make sure everybody is on the same page, number 4, bullet point number 4 will just be document and web links with an easily searchable feature. So just the word and web is being added there. And then the change that I just mentioned before. And that's the only changes to that section. So I think that should satisfy everybody's
So anyone
comments
disagree
thus
with
far.
that?
No, that's okay now.
Okay.
All right, we ready to go to the bottom of the page, 10 social media?
Okay.
I don't recall us agreeing to take out all reference to two-way. There was disagreement about that. And it was recommended initially as a trial, and this merely allows the trial.
Correct. The way that it's phrased is, and it wasn't taken off the table the last couple of meetings, is City of Ridgecrest is, occasionally they do respond on their social media to concerns or comments from citizens. They don't every time because you don't want to get caught in the weeds with that. So they're pretty careful. Other locations, other large entities or governmental bodies do the same. Even the state senators, their social media personnel will respond if appropriate to do so. And it may not be, but leaving that door open for the GA or their communications director or whomever they choose to deem appropriate, it leaves that option open for them. And I think it's an appropriate option if it gets to that point where we can have a two-way communication for some of those who maybe, aren't available to physically come in and participate in person.
Maybe the
I
word
would
can.
I was going to suggest the same thing, West. I think we can skin the cat if we, in the middle of that paragraph under social media, number 6 on page 10, is a two-way communication method we use right now can be used. And if we say may be used to answer public questions.
Or could perhaps, but either, I think.
I think may.
I like could.
I can go either way.
Anybody else have a preference?
I think I like could too. That's not,
Anybody have an
Corrected.
objection to could?
I'd rather have may.
May is the correct grammatical wording in that sentence, I believe. But either way, whichever is preferred by the group, it doesn't matter. It's a word.
Either one connotes the thought.
We used may before, so we should probably.
Okay.
That was why I said it, but it
okay.
Maybe now would be a good time, Don, for you to share with this group the two-way communication that you had after your editorial on rates and on how to read your water bill that you shared with Don and I after the water district meeting.
You're talking about what led up to the article that I wrote? Or
The article you wrote and the comments you got back?
well, those weren't comments in response to the article. The article was written in response to comments that I had seen on Facebook posting.
Okay, I have it backwards.
Yeah,
But maybe you'd like
those
to
were
share.
not comments related to the article.
Maybe you'd like to share some of those comments.
Well, what prompted the column was seeing comments on social media. There's a lot of confusion still about the fees. that are on the bills, what those fees are. There's comments in general about not understanding water bills. So a couple comments I had seen were related to the ready-to-serve charge, people not understanding what that is. They took it literally that the water district was going to come into their house and fill their bathtub and water their plants. And then also a comment about the arsenic fee, which is in the bill to pay for the financing of the 2 arsenic plants. And that comment was something like, are we having to pay you not to poison us? So, which in fact we are. They are. But just comments like that. So that prompted me to write a longer than usual column explaining all the charges, all the fees that are on the bill, why they're there, what they are, what they're intended to be used for. We haven't received any comments about the column specifically afterwards, but
Okay, I got
no.
confused, sorry.
No, but we've been hearing, not only seeing things on Facebook, but comments to customer service calls that they take, things like that. There's a lot of lack of understanding about the replenishment fee in particular. What is this
Right.
fee, and what is it being used for? So that was my attempt to try and get people to understand what all these charges are and what all these fees are.
So if I understand it right, so you saw a lot of misunderstanding on social media, and you used the newspaper column to try to push out accurate information.
Yes, but
Which is kind of what we're talking
the comment about two-way communication. I mean, we monitor comments on our Facebook page, and on occasion we have responded. Depends on what the nature of the comment is. If it's asking for specific information, if it's just making some assertion, or we don't respond to that. But if someone asks a specific question about maybe, like I can give an example, but we have responded. And so I think it is important that we have that in the communication plan, that you may use two-way communication. I don't think you want to close that door.
No, that's exactly what this group agreed as a majority was to try that. And you can, it's totally at the GA's discretion whether they reply or even allow replies.
Well, and Don just made one of the additional points that I had attempted to make a while ago. So Don actually gave an example of monitoring it and then reporting back. And if there is a big concern or concerns that warrant a response, the GA can then either respond right then and provide the proper information, or put it in an article, put it in a press release, what have you, and be able to address those specific concerns in a more appropriate venue than just at a board meeting or something. So the questions then get answered before a board meeting. So the public's not just waiting.
It just occurred to me one specific example that we did respond to is somebody wanted to know, their water service was out and they wanted to know what was going on. I don't know why people use Facebook for that when they can call customer service and get a more direct answer, because we don't monitor in real time Facebook comments. So it may be the next morning when I see that comment. And we did, and that was basically my response is, please call customer service at this number in the future. So that's an example.
Our original cautious approach to social media was, I think, exactly what Don just described. We wanted to use it to push accurate information and to very cautiously get in the fray, if it made sense, of the give and take of social media. And I think the language we have here is maybe a teeny bit stronger, but I think it's okay. I'm good to go with it, changing it to may.
With the modification to may, I think we've captured the thought.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So is everybody good with that?
Change that to may.
Yeah. Yes. So let's move on to the last comment.
Yes. Starting on the middle of page 11 to basically the end of the document, these comments are inappropriate. They are not They are not part of a plan. They are could be either considered a directive to the board or part of a personnel manual. They simply are not appropriate.
They are in other plans that the DWR approved, and the one thing that we felt it was necessary, there should be, you notice we eliminated much of what was in that section the last time, the majority of it, in fact. We specifically talked to the press protocols and coordinating. This again goes back to the communications director role that we saw as a committee, a full committee, the need for to organize and control and more specifically define, in this case, the communications director.
You just said the key word, David, control.
And that's the GA that's doing it. We are making a recommendation to them about what they do. We're not directing them to do anything. They've asked us for a recommendation, and we're saying we believe you should do this, and you should tell the public you're doing this. They don't have to take that. That's not direction.
If one proceeds with the very first item, you call it press protocol, that's censuring. Press releases are great. The Water District uses press releases quite a bit. A press release is not the same as an interview or an article by a reporter. If a reporter writes something that is incorrect, it's the responsibility of the agency or the person who's being discussed to correct it.
But that's what this section doesn't talk about what the media should or shouldn't do. That's on them. That's on their organization or the writer's ethics or moral standards. Especially the third bullet point in that first section, coordinating the GM and or the communications director, typo in there, coordinating talking points so that if somebody, on the board or whomever, is going to engage in a public press statement or have an interview, it's not uncommon to have a communications director or the GM chat with them prior to so that they understand what's in their head as well. That's not censoring. That's standard procedure when it comes to
that doesn't need to be
speaking
in a
with the
plan.
press.
That's up to the individuals involved. If a director on a board speaks out and makes an idiot out of himself saying incorrect things, that's his problem. And the way to get rid of that person is to not elect them the next time.
But it's not just his problem. It then becomes the community's problem as a whole and the board as a whole's problem if they're representing their statements as the board's position, which is something we had discussed. We took out those sections with regard to the board members because there was kind of, that gray area where we might be stepping on a line that's kind of the lawyer stuff. But the press protocols themselves are ones that are standard operating procedure for any communication plan. There are in several of them that were used as examples that we drew from and then kind of condensed it down to suit this basin a little bit more because we have some different needs and desires within the communities that we all represent.
I'm totally against it.
Other thoughts?
Renee?
I agree with having this in. Okay, I like restrictions. I don't like someone going out there and shooting their mouth off and making the whole community think that they're the spokesperson for the GA, okay? I guess I'm for that, and I don't see it as censorship. Censorship is if the newspapers don't print letters to the editor. To me, that's censorship, that they're sent. I have no problem.
I
One
also
quick-
agree with Regina.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it is in other plans, communications plans of other approved GSPs, then I don't see why we can't have it in ours too. Maybe we should have it, just because they approve plans with it in it. So, and aren't we trying to do that?
Censorship can work both ways. One can indicate to the press by not giving them information that should be given to them.
I don't agree this is censorship. To me, this is just protocols for dealing with the press.
Again,
What you say is up to you as far as what you, this is to protect the board so that the board can release information that's consistent with the board's view. If there's somebody who, as we know, not everybody on the board agrees, and those views are obviously made in public also. So there's no censorship going on there that I can see. All you're doing is codifying that if the board as a group is releasing some sort of statement or point of view, that everybody is consistent. And
you do that with a press release. And you've already talked
and you
about
also
press
do that
release.
in, if you have an interview. This also protects people who don't necessarily want to be interviewed.
This is sounding very similar to what a public affairs officer does. That's the exact intent of it. That even our ICO, our skipper, goes through the public affairs officer to make sure the messaging is consistent.
Right.
That's all it is. It's just a filter. It's not censorship.
Other thoughts? Is everybody okay? Everybody except Judy okay with this?
I believe I am, yeah.
Anyone else not want this? Any further discussion on this one? I think we've covered all of it, all of Judy's points now. So what I would say, perhaps summarizing or assembling all of the modifications we've made to this, does the full committee agree to this as our draft recommendation to the GA?
No.
I would motion that it be approved as our recommendation or draft recommendation to the next level up the board, I think was your phrasing.
Well, it goes to the GA.
Right.
That's who tasked us to do this.
Right. So, yeah, I motion that it gets approved to move to the GA with the modifications that we've discussed tonight.
I second.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
I would like my comments given to the board also. I will email them to you and to April.
Okay. As a minority report, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, looks like no more discussion, so I'll take a roll call vote. Dave Janis, aye. Renee Westelusk,
Aye.
West Katzenstein,
Aye.
Lyle Fisher,
Aye.
Judy Decker,
No?
Camille Anderson,
Aye.
Tim Carroll,
Aye.
Regina Trogelin.
Aye.
Very good. All right. With that, we have agreed on what our major task was this meeting, and we're up to individual member comments. So where did I start last time? Which end of the table?
I think you started over here last time.
Okay, well, Tim wasn't here, so he gets to start again this time. No comment? Don?
Just a reminder, the DWR Stantec Facilitation Services Public Workshop follow up to the May 17th meeting, I think it was. It is scheduled for Tuesday, October 4th at 6 o'clock here in council chambers. And it's hoped that all those that participated in the assessment interviews as well as the online survey attend. And I will say there was a pretty good response to that online survey. They received 137 responses.
Are you guys publishing that on the Facebook so that it can then be shared?
Right. Stantec has a public notice drafted. They are still working with the city IT department on some specific issues. Once they finalize those, the notice will go out as a press release to the newspapers, and we'll put it on our website as well as Facebook.
Awesome, thank you.
Will it also be a video recording we can watch later if we want to see it again?
It'll be recorded. Also, as well as being present here in the council chambers, they'll do, as they did before, a virtual meeting at the same time. And that's one of the issues that's being worked out, is apparently some issues with the phone that you have to keep calling in to get out. They're trying to resolve that. So, but yeah, there'll be a in-person meeting and then a virtual meeting going on at the same time. It'll be recorded like the GA meetings are, like this meeting is.
Okay, we have public comment that I skipped over on the last one, I think. No?
No?
There was a lot of green flashing from back there. Okay, maybe I was just distracted, or it's getting closer to Christmas.
Maybe that's it.
Oh,
I see green and red flashing. That's
We haven't even had Halloween yet.
Regina.
Well, you know, working with the subcommittee has definitely been a learning experience for me, and in a good way, in a positive way. I definitely appreciate working with Dave and Wes. With the changes and some of the modifications, I will do my best to get them out tomorrow to Dave, and then he can forward them like we've been doing. I will do my best to get them out tomorrow, because I'm burning it at both ends right now. So.
And I've made a tracking note.
Yeah, I wrote all over mine. So if anything looks hinky, you know, let Dave know, and we'll try and get that updated as soon as it hits my inbox. I can easily change the document, or Dave can make the adjustments as well. You know, I appreciate your guys' input. It was definitely an exhausting task in some regards, but you know, looking at the document as a whole, I think it better suits the communities that we all represent, rather than the old one that had, you know, lots of holes and was kind of thrown together at kind of a rush back in the day. So, you know, being able to update it and make sure that everybody's voices get heard is extremely important. So, you know, with that, I'll give it to Renee.
Can you come back to me for just a minute? I forgot to mention, Stantec is planning a second public meeting to coordinate along with the PAC, to have a second workshop.
Okay, I was going to talk about that as being a potential. Do we have a confirmation on that?
I believe that they intend to do that, yes, at the next October. Well, I don't know if it'll be at the October PAC meeting or a separate date, but that'll be coordinated through you.
Yeah, I knew that was going to come before. I believe that will come before the GA board after the October meeting. When the GA board meets, they'll be directing us to do that if that's what was requested from Stantec, DWR, and the Water District.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you to all three members of the committee that put this communications and engagement plan together. Regina, thank you, and Wes, thank you, and David, thank you. It was an excellent job.
Yeah, I think we had a very positive experience today, too. We had some specific actionable recommendations made, and I think most of them were adopted one way or another, and I think this has worked out very well. Secondly, I want to once again express my gratitude for working with David and Regina, and I will say one thing. You know, we would agree on, typically in a subcommittee, we make agreements, and then somebody has to sit down and frickin' write it up and not get it wrong, and it happened so fast when Regina did it, I think my computer almost caught on fire, because it was essentially done before she left the room. And so that made it very much easier for us, I would say. And I do like the product we came up with. I think it will be a living document. Thank you.
Judy?
I have no comment.
Lyle?
Okay. I would just like to, after reading through that thing your final draft. It looks more like a final draft when I look through it. And obviously, the committee spent an enormous amount of time getting it to this point, and I'm greatly appreciated all the effort you guys have done. Having in a previous life spent time being the guy responsible for putting a document together that was created by a committee. We all know the difficulty of this. It is a hard job, but yeah, you guys did well, I think. So anyhow, and you covered all my points too, particularly them fact sheets.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Camille?
I also want to thank you guys for all your hard work. I like that the document is much more concise than the previous ones, and so I think it'll be good.
John?
Nothing for me.
I'll complete the circle of thanks for the committee. It was a real pleasure working with two very different personalities, Renee and West, and getting to know West's dogs.
Right.
That too.
You met Regina.
What did I say?
You said me.
I'm sorry. I'm extra tired tonight. My apologies. So it was very good. It was very interesting, but it was also, I think we came up with a good product when added to the individual inputs that all of you had. At least we've gone 3 rounds on this overall in terms of the total committee. And the total committee, each of you were engaged. We had good comments working through that. I think we ended up with a product, reference to your reference, we ended up with a product that's better than a camel. I think it looks darn close to a horse, which is what we started out trying to get using an old reference. So I think this group can be pretty proud of it. Especially in light of the fact that what our old plan, and this group was responsible for the draft of that was focused on the GSP development. This one really focused on the implementation, and we had enough experience over the last 4 years to, I believe, bring forward really good recommendations based on what we have seen moving into the implementation phase, what the GA itself experienced, and the public and us as stakeholders experienced in the communications, pros and cons over the last 4 years, and what we really wanted to see in the future. So I think it represents a good document from the whole of the group. And that was, in some sense, that's been a pleasure watching this group come to overall an agreement at a very high level agreement, not 100%. That's not something that we had been capable of during certain periods of the past. So I'm proud of this group for doing that. Second thing is, I did want to say, since you confirmed what I heard might be possible, is out of that October 3rd and hearing, or October 4th? Yeah. October 4th at 6, I would hope everybody on this committee tries to see it in person or virtually in person or a video tape of it, because we will probably have a specific role for the next phase of that facilitation where Stantec is going to present some options to us. And that may include something that might or might not require an additional consideration for this plan, but obviously it's going to involve communication overall and some other factors. So we're going to become a major part, it sounds like, from what I'm hearing from staff, and Don's confirmed tonight, we're going to become a major player in some role in the facilitation process as it moves forward. So I look forward to that. With that,
I have one more thing to say.
I'm sorry, Judy, go ahead.
So are we going to have to offer beer and pretzels to get people to come to the meeting?
I hope Stantec is.
That might work.
I think we could do near beer and pretzels. There might be some legal issue with, there's no drinks and food allowed in the chambers anyway. But
That's right.
We could have them out, we could have it outside.
I meant it facetiously. I do hope you didn't discuss it. You didn't discuss it again, but I hope you make the verbiage a little stronger on public involvement. We and every other public entity can only go so far. It has to be a two-way street.
Agreed. So I look forward to it, and I answered somewhat facetiously too, obviously,
I
Judy.
know you did.
So good. With that, we'll adjourn. Thank you all.